On February 15th, 1976, 12-year-old Mark Stebbins from Ferndale, Michigan, failed to return home from an American Legion haul. 4 days later, his body was found lying in a snowbank in the parking lot of a local office building. Mark was wearing the same clothes he had last been seen in. Autopsies showed he had been strangled and violated with a foreign object and had 2 lacerations to the left rear of his head. Rope marks were found on his wrists and ankles, indicating he had been bound during his captivity. On December 22nd, 1976, in Royal Oak, Michigan, Jill Robinson left her home after an argument with her mother. The next day, her bicycle was found behind a local hobby store, and on December 26, her body was found within view of the Troy police station alongside Interstate 75 in Troy, Michigan. Jill had been shot in the face with a 12-gauge shotgun, and her body was fully clothed and wearing the backpack she had taken with her when she left home. On January 2nd, 1977, in Berkeley, Michigan, 10-year-old Christine Mahelick was reported missing after she failed to return home from a 7-Eleven store on 12 Mile Road at Oakshire. 19 days later, a mail carrier found her body fully clothed on the side of a road in Franklin Village. Christine had been smothered to death less than 24 hours prior, and her body lay within view of nearby homes. After the discovery of Christine Mahelick's body, authorities noticed similarities shared by her case and those of Mark Stebbins and Jill Robinson, and reports were released warning the public that a serial killer was possibly operating in the Oakland County area. The Michigan State Police led a group of law enforcement officials from 13 communities in the formation of a task force devoted solely to the investigation into the killings of the 3 children. On March 16, 1977, Timothy King left his home in Birmingham, Michigan, and went to a drugstore. After failing to return home, the entire Detroit metropolitan area was searched before his body was found by 2 teenagers in a shallow ditch alongside Jill Road in Livonia. Timmy had been violated with a foreign object and suffocated 6 hours prior to his body's discovery. After Timothy King disappeared, a woman told authorities that she had seen a boy with a skateboard who looked like Timothy talking to a man in the parking lot of the drugstore that he went to on March 16, 1977. A sketch of the suspected kidnapper and his blue AMC Gremlin was released, and authorities questioned every Gremlin owner in Oakland County. Investigators created a profile based on the witnesses' descriptions of the man. They believe the killer to be a white male, aged between 25 and 35, with a dark complexion, shaggy hair, and sideburns, who had a job that gave him freedom of movement and made him appear trustworthy to children. He was familiar with the area and could keep children captive for long periods of time without rousing neighbors' suspicions. The task force involved in the investigation of the 4 murders checked over 18,000 tips, resulting in 24 arrests on unrelated charges, and the discovery of a multi-state child pornography ring operating in North Fox Island in Lake Michigan. However, the task force was unable to locate the killer and disbanded in 1978, turning the investigation over to the state police. Though they had not charged anyone, the case was not without its suspects. A few weeks after the death of Timothy King, a psychiatrist working with the task force received a letter written by an anonymous author who claimed himself to be Alan. Alan claimed to be a sadomasochist slave of Frank, who he said was the Oakland County child killer. Alan went on to say in his letter that he and Frank had served in the Vietnam War, and Frank, his master, was traumatized by having to kill children. Frank was now taking revenge on affluent citizens, such as those of Birmingham, because he wanted rich people to suffer for sending forces to Vietnam. Alan expressed remorse and fear in his letter, and went on to write he was losing his sanity and was suicidal, though admitting to accompanying Frank as he sought out his victims. Alan requested the psychiatrist to respond by printing the code words. Weather Bureau says trees to bloom in 3 weeks, in that Sunday's Free Press edition, before offering to provide photographic evidence in exchange for immunity from prosecution. The psychiatrist arranged to meet Allen at a bar, but Allen did not show up and was never heard from again. Another person of interest was Archibald Edward Sloane, a child molester who victimized young boys in his neighborhood. Police found hair samples in Sloane's 1966 Pontiac Bonneville, matching hair found on the bodies of Timothy King and Mark Stebbins, but the hair itself did not belong to Sloane. While they could not prove Sloane was the killer, he had been in contact with the killer. Oakland County Chief Assistant Prosecutor Paul Walton is quoted as saying, "It doesn't mean he didn't do it, but whoever those hairs belong to is obviously a person of interest." A witness would claim they had seen Timothy King being abducted by two men, one in his late 20s and the other bearing resemblance to serial killer John Wayne Gacy, who was alleged to have been in Michigan around the time of the killings. However, Gacy's DNA did not match the DNA found on the victims' bodies. Investigators are now seeking help from the public regarding friends or associates of Sloane's. Police in Palmer Heights, Ohio, would arrest Ted Lambergin, a retired auto worker they believed was involved in a child pornography ring in the 1970s. On March 27, 2007, investigators told a Detroit TV station that Lambergin was considered the top suspect in their case. Lambergin would plead guilty to 15 sex-related counts involving young boys, rather than accept a plea bargain that would have required him to take a polygraph test on the Oakland County child killings. In February 2019, the Investigation Discovery Channel aired a 2-part, 4-hour documentary about the killings. At the same time, an investigative reporter from WXYZ-TV announced that a key suspect, convicted child sex offender Edward Sloane, had failed a polygraph test when he was interviewed by Oakland County Child Killer Task Force in 2010 and 2012. Sloane, who is now 70, is currently serving life in prison after 2 convictions of first-degree sexual assault against male minors, and his DNA does not match the samples tested by the FBI. With the 2 suspects in prison for crimes involving children and no matches on the DNA, the murders of these 4 children still lack a definitive killer to this day.